Greetings, fellow humans, and welcome to the book wormhole. I'm a little behind on my upload schedule. My last video took a little bit longer than I thought it would. That was a video I did with my sister where we went over the Monster High prompts and we gave book recommendations. Each of us gave one book recommendation. And obviously my sister is a big reader, but she reads a lot of different books than I do, so it ended up being a really cool video. I highly recommend you check it out, whether you're participating in the Monster High Readathon or not. And since the recommendations video got so long, I decided not to do my TBR with it. So this is a separate video for my TBR for October. If you're new here, I am participating as well as co-hosting the Monster High Readathon for October. This is a readathon inspired by Monster High characters, so naturally I had to do yet another closet cosplay. Today I am trying to evoke Claudine Wolf, but my inspiration for today's look is based off of the reboot version of Claudine. Okay, so let's get started with my TBR. As usual, I put way more books on my TBR than I intend on actually reading because I'm a mood reader, so I'll kind of pick and choose from the TBR. A lot of these books qualify for multiple categories, but I did try to have at least one book for each category. With one exception, there's one that I was struggling with, so I kind of doubled up on it. You'll see when we get there. Okay, so for the Venus McFlytrap prompts. For Plant Monster, Nature/Plant Presence, I plan on reading Hot House by Brian W. Aldiss. This is a science fiction where the world is overgrown with these monstrous-sized man-eaten plants. Everything about this book screams Venus McFlytrap to me. For Pollen of Persuasion, a story calling for social change, I chose Woman on the Edge of Time by Marge Piercy. So this was written in 1976. So the main character is a Latina lady living in 1976. She is swept away to the year 2137, and so in this future, humans have achieved both gender equality as well as racial equality, which is something that her current time period is very much lacking. But she's also shown an alternate future where everything goes in the opposite direction. So naturally, she wants the good future where we have achieved equality, but she isn't sure how to get there. So for Ghoulfriends Forever, a book with female friendship, I am buddy reading with the two other hosts and anyone else who wants to buddy read it with us. The Ghoulfriends Forever series, this is a middle grade, following Venus, Rochelle, and Robecca Steam, three of our character choices this year for the Monster High prompts, and obviously there are girls who have a very close female friendship. Now we're on to Rochelle Goyle's prompts. The first one is Scaris City of Frights, a book taking place abroad / not the US. This is a book I had started reading and I never finished, and there's going to be quite a few books on this TBR that I've started and haven't finished yet, which makes me think I will hopefully read a lot this month. Master of Jinn by P. Jelly Clark. This takes place in an alternate history Egypt. It's a bit of a steampunk with a lot of fantasy elements to it, so hopefully I will finish this book next month. For next category, Moanitor, a lawful good character, I chose Sybil Sue Blue by Rosalie George Brown. The tagline of this is the original woman space detective, which is so cool and so ahead of its time for when it came out. I think it came out 1965. She is trying to solve the murder of several teenagers' death, and she's also trying to find her missing husband. So I assume because she's a detective, she is going to act within the law, considering herself a lawful good character. Next category is Friday Night Frights, transfer student, and this is a character who switches sides. So I'm doing a little bit of a different interpretation for this one. I chose Hooked by A.C. Wise. This is somewhat of a sequel to Wendy Darling, which I reviewed earlier this year and I really enjoyed. And in Wendy Darling, Peter Pan is actually the main villain of the book, And the character of Captain Hook was largely absent from the book, with just a few hints of what happened to him, and all the hints were just really intriguing. And I kind of got the sense from Captain Hook that he was just like this regular sailor who kind of got like swept into Peter Pan's world and forced to play the villain, so I think this is going to be a very sympathetic book to Captain Hook. And since Captain Hook is usually considered the villain of the story, I think this counts for a character who switches sides, because I think he's going to act as both a villain sometimes in this book because of Peter Pan, but ultimately be a good character since Peter Pan was the villain of the first book. On to Robecca Steam's prompts, the first being Hexacaiah, a book with family. This is yet another book I started to read and I didn't finish, mostly because I was reading it as an ebook and it's like my least favorite way to read a book is from a screen. I've been on my library's waiting list for the audiobook, so if it comes in next month, I will read this book. Without further ado, the book I'm talking about is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And while this is a romance, the main character is also very close to her sister, and it is partially about their like relationship with each other. At the beginning of the book, the main character notes that she feels like she's kind of drifting away from her sister and that her sister has a secret she isn't telling her. Also, I noticed despite the main character's mother having been passed since before the beginning of the book, the relationship she had with her mother comes up a lot in this book too, so that's also a family relationship. Again, whether or not I finish reading this book next month largely depends on if I get it from the library in time. The next category is Steampunk, a book with a historical setting. I have 2 books for this, as well as you can tell that a couple of the other books I mentioned already would qualify for this. The first book is Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. This book takes place in 1915. As with all of P. Djeli Clark's books, it's an alternate history. This one takes place in America and deals with the Ku Klux Klan, and it plays around with just like different historical events, as well as always centering like black characters at the center of the story. And the other book I chose is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is yet another time travel story. I actually have a lot of time travel on this list. The main character is a modern black woman and she is swept away to the year 1815 when slavery was still going on, and she is supposed to save one of her ancestors, but the ancestor she's supposed to save is a white man. I can expect some heavy themes from this one, but it also sounds super interesting. Also, I read Octavia Butler for the first time this month, and I'm absolutely obsessed with her work now. The next category is Skultimate Rollermaze, an empowering feminist read. Yet another time travel book. The Future of Another Timeline by Annalee Newitz. From everything I heard about this book on BookTube, it's just a very girl power book. The main character has the ability to travel time, and she decides to go back to monumental historical events and tries to change history in order to make her timeline better. But does it work? We'll find out. Okay, for Neighthan Rots, we have Freaky Fusion, a book that is 2 or more genres. For this one, I chose Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is very much just a fantasy novel set in a science fiction setting, where the story takes place in space, but there's like swords, there's possibly magic. I think there's necromancers in this book. For Rainbow, a book with LGBT rep, a lot of these books count for that, but I chose Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, mostly because I've been on the waiting list for the audiobook for this at the library for like the past few months, so I'm hoping for it to finally come through for next month. Do you see the running theme here? So this one is about a orc and a tiefling. They run a coffee shop together, and I'm pretty sure they fall in love. It definitely has sapphic representation in it. And the last category for Neighthan is Freaky Flaw, a character with a tragic past. I chose Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. So the main character reconnects with a few of her friends from the boarding school she attended as a teenager. Now she's a young adult, and as they are reconnecting, they kind of reflect at their time at the school and realize that things weren't as good as they seemed. There was a lot of dishonest stuff happening at that school. So I think that counts as a tragic past. For Skelita Calaveras, we have Day of the Dead, a book about death. So for this one, I chose The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. Every time October comes around, I think about rereading this book because I haven't read it in like 12 years. But I remember really enjoying it as a child. This is somewhat of a retelling of The Jungle Book, but the main character instead is an orphan raised by ghosts in a cemetery after his parents were murdered. And this is yet another middle grade, so probably another quick read if I get around to it. I have a hard time rereading books because there's new books I want to read. The next category is Drop Dead Gorgeous, a book where clothes/fashion plays an important role. This was the one category that I decided to just double up on rather than have a unique recommendation for it. Sorry. But I have two. So the first is A Master of Jinn. When I was reading this book, I noticed the main character's outfit was described a lot in this book. She would wear these bespoke suits, so obviously she cared a lot about her fashion sense, but also because she was wearing trousers during a time where women really didn't wear trousers. I feel like that counts for fashion. The Ghoulfriends series, because Johara said that one of the books deals a lot with Rochelle and her interest in designing clothes. The very last category is Scaritage, a chosen one main character. I chose for this one Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert. So this is the second book to Dune. The main character is seen as a messiah figure to the locals of the planet Dune called a Fremen. In the first book, he mostly rejected this chosen one status, but after kind of losing everything dear to him, he does end up accepting it by the end of the book and really embracing it. And it seems like he is going to kind of try to use the Fremen to build his own army and fight against the people who killed his father and take back his place. But also what I've heard about this series is while the first book really followed the hero's journey, as the series goes on, Frank Herbert challenges the hero's journey. I don't know if this book will depict any of that, but I do want to continue on in the series, and I think overall the series counts for chosen one main character. So that is my TBR for next month. I'm hoping to get a good amount of it done. I don't think I'm going to read all of it because I never do read my entire TBR, but I think there's a good chance I'll get most of it done. If you're interested in joining the readathon, I recommend following the other hosts, because we'll be doing weekly reading sprints together, and we also have a Discord chat that you can join. I'm going to link everything in the description below. And so remember to support your local library, shop independent when you can, and until next time, please stay tuned.